Good day and welcome to all who are joining us in our series on gender violence. Today is the 9th of August 2020. It is Women's Day. We want to wish all women and girl children a happy Women's Day. Today we are having a panel discussion in connection with gender violence. And our scripture readings are as follows: Matthew 5 verses 13 to 16, James 2 verses 14 to 26. The presiding bishop theme is social holiness. Please read the scriptures. Matthew, which tells us about salt of the earth and light of the world, and as well as James 2, which tells us about faith and our works by ourselves. My name is Hope Abrahams, and I represent the women's ministry at the Athlone Methodist Church, of which Brian Berger is the minister. We, the women of AMC, which is Athlone Methodist Church, have had a series of panel discussion and services in connection with gender-based violence so far. Today is one such service. We have got on the panel today Dr. Lynette Johnson, who is a very experienced gynecologist. We also have Mrs. Blanche Rezant, who is just so experienced in social worker. She is a social worker. Then we also have Sheen Rippenaar. Mr. Sheen Rippenaar is a lawyer and he's a lecturer at UWC. And lastly, we have Mrs. Esmeralda Jacobs, who is an educator of very many years. The questions are the following to the panel. Question 1 to Dr. Johnson. Victims are scared to tell the real story when visiting the doctor. What signs will there be to show the real story of abuse?
There may be obvious features such as a blue eye, a bruised rib, bruises on the legs and arms or in the genital area, but there may also be more subtle signs of psychological effects, such as lack of self-esteem, loss of interest in daily activities, the appearance of being meek, change of appetite, loss of weight, gaining weight, sleep patterns that have changed, tearfulness, lashing out, anger. And when patients bring their partners with them, we are very keen to note their interaction with each other and whether the partner overshadows the patient, whether he allows her to answer questions or not, and whether his relationship or interaction with the healthcare worker is different to that from his interaction with his partner.
Question 1 to the lawyer, Mr. Sheen Rippenaar. GBV during lockdown and COVID-19 is very present. How would you prepare a client for a court case in the midst of GBV?
When preparing the client for the hearing, and by the hearing I mean when the matter is already on the court roll and is to be heard in open court, I will start by explaining to the client what will happen on the day and also who plays what role in the court proceedings. I will explain to client the process which will be followed once the hearing is started, and also explain to client what will be required of the client. And here we are speaking about things such as the taking of the oath, testifying, and also being cross-examined and re-examined.
Question 1 to the social worker, Mrs. Blanche Rezant. GBV is a shocking reality for so many women in South Africa. How often have you personally been faced with a serious issue?
Personally, I'm a woman, so gender based violence has been something that has been around, even around my own life, in my upbringing, as I've been working in the different fields. GBV rears its ugly head in all societies, whether it is a township or whether it is a elite suburb. Many people think that working with GBV is only about working with women and children who have been abused or victim of abuse, which is true. However, it often presents itself as a street child who witnessed their mom being abused by her partner, a 14-year-old boy who has been part of a group of boys who has killed an elderly woman, a young girl who is struggling with her sexuality and is being bullied for it. GBV is everywhere.
Question 1 to the educator, Mrs. Esmeralda Jacobs. Do you think we do enough to protect our school-going children? How often do schools react to GBV and what programs are initiated? What more can be done?
At the moment, the Education Department does not have specific programs to deal with gender-based violence, but schools can contact organizations who work specifically in this field, like Power, Rape Crisis, or the legal aid clinics at the universities, who can then come to the schools, run workshops, address the learners on their rights, and make learners feel safer to report abuse.
What are the indicators you look for when you enter someone's home that points to GBV?
It varies. So, when you've worked with gender based violence for a while, it might be easier to pick up the signs and indicators. However, it's often this feeling inside, you just feel like something's not right. It's a sense that you get that either the husband puts or the partner puts down his partner, does all the talking and dominates the conversation, checks up on the female all the time, even when they're at work. They try to suggest things. They try to keep her away from the family and friends, isolating her quite a bit, and being very possessive about what she wears, where she goes, who she goes with. So this is something that happens as well. What it could look like for her is that she might be nervous to speak while he is there, that she might be sick and miss work, cover up bruises, make excuses at the last minute, make excuses for him, and often seems maybe sad or lonely, withdrawn, and sometimes they turn to alcohol or drugs in order to cope.
What do you think the root and underlying causes of GBV is, and how can we address it?
As I've said before, the commonest causes of gender-based violence is based on unequal gender norms. The degradation and objectification of women in the media, the culture of rape, poverty and hunger, rage, and in certain countries, war and conflict.
I am being abused. I become the abuser later. How do you look for signs of this type of behavior in young children?
Some of the things educators can do is to always believe the child when they disclose the abuse. You have to reassure them that it was not their fault that the abuse happened, and you must try and make them feel safe. You also, if you become aware that a colleague is abusing a child, you must report it to the authorities. Schools can establish strong links with the police, clinics, hospitals, social workers or NGOs who can support and counsel the abused learner. They must also raise awareness amongst teachers and learners about GBV.
Name and explain the purpose of one law that protects the citizens against GBV.
In South Africa, there are two laws which protect against gender-based violence. These are the Domestic Violence Act and the Protection from Harassment Act. The Domestic Violence Act provides for relief when the perpetrator is known to the victim or is known to the complainant, whereas the Protection from Harassment Act provides relief where the perpetrator is unknown to the complainant. With the Protection from Harassment Act, it is used for situations such as stalking or social media harassment, social media gender-based violence, whereas the Domestic Violence Act focuses more on where there is a domestic relationship between the perpetrator and the complainant. Both of these laws provide for protection orders to be instituted and finalized and to be obtained by victims or complainants who have suffered gender-based violence.
How does abuse affect the progress of learners? How are young children, victims, emotionally affected? And what do you think can be done to ensure a healthy future?
Parents are first and foremost the primary caregivers of children, and they should be the ones protecting their children. When this does not happen, the children will more often than not confide in a teacher whom they trust. When a teacher becomes aware of abuse, they must report it to the police or to the Department of Social Development. Failure to do so will incur either a fine or imprisonment or both. On the Department of Education's website, they have a document which outlines the responsibilities of teachers when they find out that a child has been abused.
Urgent action is needed to tackle GBV in our country. Those were the words of Cyril Ramaphosa. What is your view on this statement?
I would agree with this statement because if we look at the news in South Africa, and especially over the past 2 or 3 years, we see that gender-based violence is an issue which comes to the fore on a daily basis. It affects parties very seriously and has the potential to completely ruin lives.
Can you provide us with some statistics and the reason for either the increase or the decrease of cases?
In South African healthcare facilities, 1.75 million people seek help for violence-related injuries every year. The World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 3 women will be victims of abuse during their lifetime. More recently, during the COVID pandemic in South Africa, NAHAU has noted a 500% increase in the incidence of gender-based violence.
By turning our heads the other way and not reacting when confronted or found in a situation where someone is abused in front of you, they say that makes you as guilty as the perpetrator. Do you agree with this? And why?
So if I see abuse taking place in front of me and I turn a blind eye, am I as guilty as the perpetrator? Yes or no? This is a difficult one to answer because the activist in me says, yes, of course you are as guilty. Because if you can speak up against the rubble that's on the corner of the street and been gathering there, if you can speak up against the neighbor that is having a loud party during lockdown, if we can speak up against those things, then why aren't we speaking up against gender-based violence? Why aren't we speaking up against the neighbor that keeps swearing at his wife and beating her up and pushing and shoving on her? Why aren't we speaking up about that? That's the activist in me. That says if you have the confidence and the ability to speak up, to raise your voice, please do so. Please be the voice to the voiceless. However, the realist in me understands that people often worry that they are interfering, that this might be a private matter, but it's equally worrying if we don't say anything if somebody's being abused. Your support could make a huge difference. And your support doesn't have to be, hey, stop that. Your support could be as subtle as offering support, offering assistance, offering to look after, to babysit, offer to assist in different ways. I'm not sure what that could be. You may risk embarrassment if the person denies that anything is happening and that they become suspicious that you might know that they are in an abusive relationship. But it is important that we speak out. It is important that we offer our support and not judge the person in any way that is being victimized by their partner.
Is GBV too costly to ignore? Does it have a negative impact on the economy of our country?
Yes, gender-based violence is indeed too costly to ignore, and it has indeed had and continues to have a negative effect on the economy. As victims of gender-based violence, often they have to stay out of work to attend court or to heal from any injury suffered, both physical and psychological. And this taking of days off of staying out of work often then leads to pay cuts and loss of income and employment. And this in turn has a negative effect on both the economy of the person and also their family, but also of the country.
What measures have the Education Department put in place to address GBV? What additional resources would you suggest they implement?
Although there are guidelines in the Education Act and the Children's Act, as well as guidelines posted on the website of the Department of Education, unfortunately, there's no cohesive plan or measures that are put in place. So it's up to the individual schools how much they are going to do to shine a light on gender-based violence. So in the past few years in our country, we've seen a lot of demonstrations, and we've seen that high schools have become involved in those demonstrations, opposing gender-based violence. And unfortunately, schools have to come up with their own measures for what they're going to do.
How do you think can women overcome domestic violence?
The first thing is to educate. And that is exactly what Hope Abrams is trying to achieve with this program. We can also take to social media to highlight the plight of victims of gender-based violence. We can try to educate family members, friends, social groups, community groups, people at our places of work, church organizations. We can also donate or sponsor a woman who has survived abuse. We can donate towards women's non-profit organizations, and we can donate and participate in women's marches. And this particular weekend, we will all be joining the virtual Women's March that highlights the plight of women or victims of gender-based violence, and at the same time donating towards NPOs who are very busy trying to improve the well-being of victims of gender-based violence.
What challenges do you experience, and what measures can be taken in place to address this?
This question has been milling and has been going around for many years, even prior to my work in gender-based violence. And there's so much that has been done, there's so much that can still be done. So there are many challenges. Some of the challenges are around governance and around government making arrangements and providing for gender-based violence support and services. Then some are more difficult to manage, which is around society and socialization, because often victims grow up in homes where almost gender-based violence becomes a norm. It's a norm to be spoken to like that. It's a norm that women are treated as lesser than or not equal. And in society, you just become accustomed to that. So when somebody treats you a certain way, when they speak to you a certain way, it becomes normalized behavior, and you are unable to assert yourself to say, no, I will not be spoken to like that. So often individual self-esteem, socialization, where they come from, their backgrounds, all of those play a role as well. And lots of work, prevention and early intervention needs to be done with young boys, young girls, building up self-esteem. So lots of work needs to go into that, so that you're building up strong individuals who know who they are, know what they want, and are confident about saying yes and no, giving their consent at the right time, and stepping away from situations that might be hard for them.
Conclusion. When I read the scriptures as mentioned, what came to my mind is A, making a difference in this world. And the scripture also told me, or it came to my mind, that we need to live with a purpose as Christians. We as Christians in the midst of COVID-19 and lockdown need to live out our purpose that God intends for us by making a difference in the lives of those who suffer through abuse of any kind and also violence. Matthew 5 speaks about the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Salt has many good qualities. It gives taste, and that's one quality. Light makes us see in the dark. My life as a Christian is expected to give taste at all times. Light goes together with salt. People need to see who we belong to at all times. I cannot separate who I am as a follower or child of Christ from my purpose and mission. My purpose or mission is to let my light shine in this world. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste the salt, see light, that the Lord is good. Salt and light make a difference in the world. So if we, His children, who have accepted Him in our lives, are the salt of the earth and the light of the world, how do we make a difference in the lives of those who suffer in this time of lockdown and COVID-19 and in the midst of GBV? Are we satisfied to stay in our comfort zones as Christians instead of doing or venturing out and doing for others? Or instead of helping others, instead of assisting, making life better for others? I cannot tell you what to do or how to do in the lives of those who suffer. We just need to hear what God tells us to do to make a difference in victims of GBV, so that they can be comfortable and also to assist and to have compassion in any way we can. James 2 speaks about our faith. Genuine faith will be lived out in actions. Our words and how we treat others. I want to emphasize how we treat others, what we do for others, how we do towards others. That's my actions as a Christian. It validates my faith. Let's be genuine Christians with genuine faith. Not only words, but doing. So what am I trying to say now? Because I belong to Christ, I should now make a difference in the lives of others by my actions. When people see me, when people experience things with me, there needs to be a difference in my life so that others can know that I belong to Christ. I want to thank the panel, Dr. Lynette Johnson, Mr. Sheen Rippenaar, Blanche Rezant, and Esmeralda Jacobs. I thank God for your availability at all times we need it. Your responses have been an eye-opener to us as Christians to become more active by blowing the whistle and to do for others, as the scriptures also says, on this GBV and empowering others in situations like these. May God bless you all and stay safe. Thank you.